Chapter 1. The life he built. Brad Lockhart had never imagined life would look like this. Quiet mornings punctuated by the sound of cartoon laughter and the smell of burnt toast. For years ago, he thought he had everything figured out. A wife he loved, a son they adored, and a future that felt solid. Then one night it all shattered. He still remembered the note. How could he forget? It was sitting on the kitchen counter like a casual grocery list, except it wasn't. It was goodbye. A neat stack of papers sat beside it. Divorce papers already signed, and documents relinquishing her parental rights. No mention of Nick. Not a single word about the boy sleeping in his bed down the hall. Just a line about her high school sweetheart. How they were meant to be. Like the 8 years Brad had given her were nothing more than filler in her story. He'd read it twice, then a third time, hoping the words would rearrange themselves into something sane. They didn't. He'd gone into Nick's room, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at his son's small, peaceful face. 6 years old now, but back then just 2. A baby who didn't understand why mommy wasn't coming back. Brad had promised himself that night, "You'll never feel abandoned. Not by me." Bills didn't care about heartbreak. So Brad worked. He worked until his hands ached and his eyes burned. Until the grief dulled into something manageable. He built a new normal, one that revolved around Nick. And somehow they made it. Nick was happy, really happy. He had grandparents who spoiled him rotten. A dad who showed up every single day. And a life stitched together with love and resilience. This weekend was one of those rare pauses in Brad's routine. He was at his parents' house, watching Nick race across the backyard with a Nerf gun, while his father pretended to be the world's slowest villain. "Bradley, sit down before you wear a hole in my floor," his mother called from the kitchen doorway. She was holding a teapot like it was a scepter. Her gray-streaked hair pulled into a bun that meant business. Brad chuckled and dropped into a chair at the kitchen table. "I'm not pacing. You were pacing," she said, pouring tea into 2 cups. "You always pace when you're thinking too hard." He accepted the cup, inhaling the floral steam. "Maybe I'm just getting my steps in." Hum. She sat across from him, eyes sharp with that maternal radar that saw through everything. "What's on your mind?" Brad hesitated, swirling the tea. "Just life stuff." "Life stuff?" she repeated, unimpressed. "Try again." He smiled faintly. "I was thinking about something you said earlier, about your friends complaining how expensive house repairs are." "Oh, don't get me started." She waved a hand. "Every week it's something. Leaky faucets, broken outlets, clogged drains. Half of them don't even know where the circuit breaker is." "That's the thing," Brad said, leaning forward. "People don't know the basics. Stuff that could save them hundreds if they just learned it." His mother tilted her head. "You sound like you have an idea." "I do." He set his cup down, warming to the thought. "What if we set up a workshop? Teach people the fundamentals, plumbing, electrical, car maintenance, even budgeting. Real-world stuff nobody teaches you." Her eyebrows shot up. "A workshop?" "Yeah. Hands-on training. How to change an outlet safely. How to diagnose car problems so you don't get ripped off. Strategies to make the most of your time and money." He shrugged. "I've had to learn all this the hard way. Not everyone has the time or the reason to figure it out." His mother's expression softened, pride flickering in her eyes. "That's actually brilliant." "You think so?" "I know so." She reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "People need this, Brad. Especially single parents. It's expensive out there." Brad nodded slowly. "That's what I was thinking." From the backyard came a shriek of laughter. Nick's voice, high and bright. Brad glanced out the window, watching his son dart behind a tree. Nerf gun raised like a soldier in battle. His father was pretending to surrender, hands in the air, grinning like a fool. Brad's chest tightened with something warm. This was why he did everything. For that laugh. For that joy. His mother followed his gaze, then looked back at him. "You know, your father would love this idea. He could help teach." Brad smiled. "You think?" "Oh, please. He's been waiting for an excuse to show off his toolbox." She stood, already in motion. "And I'll handle the scheduling and getting the word out." Brad laughed. "Mom, this isn't a gossip column." "Bradley." She gave him a look that could level mountains. "My network is faster than the internet." He shook his head, grinning. "I don't doubt that." By the time the tea cooled, the idea had roots. His mother was already listing names of people who'd jump at the chance. His father wandered in, sweaty and triumphant from his Nerf defeat. And when Brad explained the plan, his dad's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. "I'll clear out the garage," his father said immediately. "We'll make it a proper workshop." Brad felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. A spark of excitement. This wasn't just about fixing pipes or teaching people how to budget. It was about building something that mattered. Something that could help people the way he wished someone had helped him when his world fell apart. He didn't know it yet, but this idea was about to change everything. Chapter 2. Building something new. Brad wasn't sure what surprised him more. The speed at which his mother mobilized her network, or the fact that his father had cleared out the garage in less than 24 hours. The man had been hoarding tools and half-finished projects for decades, yet somehow, by the next weekend, The space looked like a showroom for DIY dreams. "Don't get used to this," his father grumbled, sweeping sawdust into a neat pile. "I'm only doing this because you said people need help. And because your mother threatened to tell the entire church I'm lazy." Brad smirked, leaning against the doorframe. "You're not lazy, Dad. You just prioritize relaxation." His father shot him a look. "You sound like your mother." "She's not wrong. Don't start." His dad jabbed the broom at him like a sword. "You're lucky I like this idea." Brad grinned. "You're lucky I'm giving you an excuse to show off." His father's chest puffed up like a rooster. "Well, someone's got to teach these folks how not to electrocute themselves." Brad laughed, stepping inside the garage. The space smelled like oil and wood shavings, familiar and comforting. Pegboards lined the walls, tools hanging in perfect order. A miracle Brad suspected was his mother's doing, not his father's. A sturdy workbench dominated the center, flanked by folding chairs his mom had probably borrowed from the church hall. "This looks amazing," Brad said, genuine admiration in his voice. His father shrugged, but Brad caught the flicker of pride in his eyes. "It'll do." Inside the house, his mother was hunched over a notebook, scribbling furiously. When Brad peeked over her shoulder, he saw names, dozens of them, organized into neat columns. "Mom," he said slowly. "What is this?" "Sign-ups," she replied without looking up. "We've got 20 people for the first class." 20. Brad blinked. "You just told people yesterday." "I told Marge yesterday," his mother corrected. "Marge told everyone else." Brad shook his head, laughing. "Your gossip network is terrifying." "It's efficient," she said primly. "And don't call it gossip. It's community engagement, right?" He leaned against the counter. "So what's the plan?" "Well," she said, flipping the notebook closed, "your father handles the hands-on stuff. You assist. I'll run the budgeting sessions in the dining room. Tea, cookies, and hard truths about living within your means." Brad chuckled. "Sounds brutal." "It's necessary." She gave him a pointed look. "You'd be surprised how many people think credit cards are magic." Brad sobered. "Yeah, I've seen it." His mother softened. "You've done well, Bradley. Better than most would in your shoes." He swallowed hard, the compliment hitting deeper than he expected. "Thanks, Mom." She patted his arm. "Now go help your father before he drills a hole in my floor." The next few weeks were a blur of planning. Brad spent evenings drafting lesson outlines, basic plumbing, electrical safety, car diagnostics. He wanted the classes to be practical, not overwhelming. No jargon, no fluff, just real skills people could use. He tested everything twice, imagining someone with zero experience standing in front of a clogged sink or a dead car battery. He even wrote down common mistakes, because if there was one thing he'd learned, it was that people underestimated how creative disaster could be. His father reviewed the plans with a grunt of approval. "Not bad," he said, which in Lockhart language meant excellent. His mother, meanwhile, turned the dining room into a financial boot camp. She printed worksheets, made charts, and stocked up on tea like she was preparing for a siege. "If they're going to cry about their spending habits," she said, "they'll do it with Earl Grey in hand." Brad laughed, but he knew she was right. Money was emotional, so was survival. The night before the first class, Brad stood in the garage, staring at the rows of chairs and the neat stack of tools on the workbench. He felt nervous, which was ridiculous. He'd faced worse than this. Divorce papers, sleepless nights, a toddler asking why mommy didn't come home. This was easy, except it wasn't. Because this wasn't just about teaching people how to fix a leaky faucet. It was about giving them something he wished he'd had, a sense of control when everything else felt broken. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling slowly. "You've got this," he muttered. From the doorway came a small voice. "Got what, Daddy?" Brad turned, smiling as Nick padded in wearing dinosaur pajamas. "Hey, buddy. What are you doing up?" "Grandma said I could have a cookie if I brushed my teeth." Nick held up a chocolate chip trophy. "I brushed extra good." Brad chuckled, crouching down. "You're supposed to eat cookies before you brush." Nick frowned. "That's silly." Brad ruffled his hair. "You're right. That's silly." Nick looked around the garage, eyes wide. "Are you making a fort?" Brad laughed. "Not a fort. A workshop." "What's a workshop?" "It's where people come to learn how to fix things." Nick considered this, then nodded solemnly. "Can I come?" Brad smiled, heart squeezing. "Maybe when you're a little older." Nick grinned. "I'm already big." Brad hugged him tight, breathing in the warm, familiar scent of shampoo and childhood. "You're the biggest thing in my world, kiddo." Nick giggled, cookie crumbs sprinkling onto Brad's shirt. "You're silly." Brad kissed his head. "Go finish your cookie before Grandma catches you." As Nick scampered off, Brad stood alone in the quiet garage, feeling something he hadn't felt in years, a flicker of hope. Tomorrow people would walk through that door. People who needed help. People who wanted change. And maybe, just maybe, one of them would change his life too. Chapter 3. Enter Carmen. Carmen Alvarez stared at the ceiling fan spinning lazily above her bed, its blades slicing the air in slow, hypnotic circles. It was midnight and she was wide awake again. Sleep had become a stranger these past few months, ever since her life unraveled like a cheap sweater. She could still see the taillights disappearing down the street, her boyfriend's car shrinking into the distance without so much as a backward glance. No fight, no shouting, just silence. 1 minute he was there, the next he was gone, taking with him the illusion that they were building a life together. She'd stood in the doorway, clutching Erica's favorite stuffed bunny, wondering how someone could walk away so easily from a 5-year-old who adored him. That was the night Carmen realized something brutal. He was never going to be the father her daughter deserved, and she was done waiting for him to change. So she packed what little she had, moved back to her hometown, and knocked on her Aunt Rosa's door with tears in her eyes and Erica on her hip. Rosa welcomed them without hesitation, her tiny house smelling of cinnamon and comfort. It wasn't glamorous. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a kitchen that doubled as a laundry room, but it was safe. And right now, safe was enough. Carmen rolled onto her side, glancing at the glow-in-the-dark stars Erica had stuck to the wall. Her daughter was curled up in bed, breathing softly, her curls a halo against the pillow. Carmen's chest tightened. Erica deserved more than this, more than hand-me-down clothes and dinners of boxed macaroni. She deserved stability, joy, a mother who wasn't drowning in bills and panic. Carmen exhaled, pressing a hand to her forehead. She was tired, bone-deep tired, but she wasn't broken. Not yet. Tomorrow, she promised herself. Tomorrow, she'd start fixing things. Morning came with the smell of coffee and the sound of her aunt humming in the kitchen. Carmen shuffled in, hair in a messy bun, wearing the same faded t-shirt she'd slept in. "Buenos dias," Rosa said, sliding a plate of toast across the counter. "You look like you fought a bear." "Lost?" Carmen muttered, sinking into a chair. "Thanks for breakfast." Rosa poured her coffee, eyes sharp. "You need a plan, Mija." "I know." Carmen wrapped her hands around the mug, letting the warmth seep into her fingers. "I just don't know where to start." Her aunt tapped the table. "Start with money. Always start with money." Carmen groaned. "Don't remind me. I will remind you every day until you listen." Rosa smirked. "You're not the only one struggling. Half the town is broke." Carmen raised an eyebrow. "Comforting." "Actually," Rosa said, leaning in, "there's something new happening. A workshop, people teaching how to fix things, cars, plumbing, all that, and budgeting classes." Carmen blinked. "Budgeting?" "Yes, real advice. Not that nonsense on the internet." Rosa waved a hand. "I heard it from Marge at the bakery. She said it's run by a nice family. The son is doing the repair classes, the mother is teaching money stuff." Carmen frowned. "Do you think it's legit?" "I think," Rosa said, "you need it." Carmen stared into her coffee, the weight of her reality pressing down. She hated admitting it, but Rosa was right. She didn't know the first thing about budgeting beyond, don't spend what you don't have. And fixing things? Forget it. If the faucet leaked, she called the landlord. If the car made a weird noise, she prayed it wouldn't explode. But now, there was no landlord, no boyfriend, just her. "Where is it?" Carmen asked quietly. Rosa smiled like she'd been waiting for that question. "Lockhart Place. Big garage. First class is Saturday." Carmen nodded slowly. Saturday. She could do Saturday. She had to. That night, Carmen sat on the edge of Erica's bed, brushing her daughter's curls while Erica chattered about cartoons and cookies. Carmen smiled, but her mind was elsewhere, on the workshop, on the possibility of learning something that might make life less terrifying. "Mommy," Erica's voice pulled her back. "Are we gonna have our own house soon?" Carmen's throat tightened. "Someday, baby." "Pink walls," Erica said firmly. "And a big yard." Carmen kissed her cheek. "Pink walls and a big yard. Promise." As Erica drifted to sleep, Carmen whispered another promise to herself. "You're going to figure this out. For her. For you." She didn't know it yet, but that promise was about to lead her straight into Brad Lockhart's world, and nothing would ever be the same. Chapter 4. First Impressions. Saturday morning dawned bright and breezy, the kind of day that made everything feel possible. Brad stood in the garage, adjusting the last folding chair and mentally rehearsing his opening line. He wasn't nervous. Okay, maybe a little, but mostly he wanted things to go smoothly. His father was already tinkering with a toolbox like a surgeon prepping instruments, and his mother was inside arranging tea and cookies for her budgeting class. "Dad," Brad said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Remember, don't scare them." His father snorted. "I don't scare people. You once told a guy he'd probably die if he wired an outlet wrong." "Well, he would've." His dad shrugged. "Better scared than fried." Brad sighed. "Just be nice." Before his father could reply, voices drifted in from the driveway. Laughter, chatter, the sound of car doors closing. Brad straightened, heart thumping as the first wave of attendees approached. Mostly women, a few men, all looking curious and slightly overwhelmed. And then he saw her. She was walking toward the garage with a little girl clutching her hand. A girl with curls bouncing like springs and eyes full of mischief. The woman herself looked tired, but in a way that spoke of strength. Her dark hair was pulled into a loose ponytail, and her jeans were worn but neat. There was something about her, something that made Brad's pulse skip like a scratched record. "Hi," she said, offering a tentative smile. "Is this the workshop?" Brad cleared his throat, suddenly aware that his shirt had a grease stain. "Yeah, welcome. I'm Brad." "Carmen," she replied. "And this is Erica." Erica grinned, holding up a stuffed bunny like a trophy. "Hi." Brad crouched slightly, smiling at the little girl. "Hey there, Erica. Nice bunny." "It's Mr. Fluff," she said solemnly. "He's very brave." Brad chuckled. "Good to know." Before he could say more, a blur of motion shot past him. Nick, Nerf gun in hand, eyes wide with excitement. "Daddy, there's a kid." Brad groaned. "Nick manners." Nick skidded to a stop, grinning at Erica. "Wanna play?" Erica looked at her mom, then back at Nick. "Do you have cookies?" Nick's face lit up. "Grandma has a whole plate." Erica dropped her bunny like a soldier abandoning gear. "Let's go." And just like that, the two kids vanished into the house, leaving Brad and Carmen standing in the garage, slightly stunned. "Well," Brad said, rubbing the back of his neck, "that was fast." Carmen laughed, a soft, warm sound that made something in Brad's chest loosen. "She's never met a cookie she didn't like." "Nick either," Brad said, smiling. "They'll probably be best friends by lunch." "Lucky them," Carmen murmured, her eyes scanning the garage. "This is impressive." Brad followed her gaze, suddenly wishing he'd swept the floor one more time. "Thanks. We're teaching basic home repairs today. Plumbing, electrical safety, that kind of thing." "Sounds useful," Carmen said. "I'm not great at this stuff." Brad grinned. "That's why you're here." She smiled back, and for a moment, the noise of the arriving crowd faded. It was just them. Two people standing in a garage, both carrying stories neither had told yet. The class started with Brad explaining the basics of shutting off a water supply. He held up a wrench, demonstrating how to loosen a stubborn valve. Carmen sat in the second row, listening intently, her brow furrowed in concentration. When Brad asked for volunteers, she hesitated, then raised her hand. "Brave," Brad said, handing her the wrench. "Okay, imagine this pipe is leaking. First step." Carmen bit her lip. Panic?" The group laughed, and Brad grinned. "Fair answer. But after that." She laughed too, cheeks flushing. "Turn off the water?" "Exactly." He guided her through the motion, his hand brushing hers briefly as he steadied the wrench. The contact was nothing, barely a second, but it sent a jolt through him he hadn't felt in years. "Got it," Carmen said, tightening the valve with a triumphant smile. "Nice work," Brad said, and he meant it. She looked proud, and he liked that more than he should. By the time the session ended, Carmen had learned how to fix a leaky faucet and avoid electrical disasters. She lingered near the doorway, chatting with his mother about budgeting classes, while Erica and Nick demolished the cookie plate like tiny locusts. Brad watched her laugh at something his mom said, her face lighting up in a way that made his chest ache. He didn't know her story, not yet, but he wanted to, and that realization scared him more than any broken pipe ever could. Chapter 5. Sparks and Wrenches. The second workshop session was all about plumbing. Specifically, how to fix a leaky faucet without calling in a professional who charged more than a car payment. Brad had set up a row of practice sinks along the garage wall, each rigged to drip just enough to annoy anyone with ears. "All right, folks," Brad said, clapping his hands to get everyone's attention. "Today we're tackling leaks. They're sneaky, they're persistent, and they will drain your wallet faster than a toddler drains a juice box." A ripple of laughter moved through the group. Carmen, sitting in the front row this time, smiled, really smiled, and Brad felt that ridiculous jolt again. He shoved it aside and focused on the task at hand. "First rule of plumbing," Brad continued, holding up a wrench like a knight brandishing a sword. "Don't panic. Second rule, don't over-tighten. You're fixing a leak, not arm wrestling the pipe." He demonstrated the steps, explaining each motion with easy humor. The group leaned in, nodding, some taking notes like they were preparing for an exam. When he asked for volunteers, Carmen's hand shot up before he even finished the sentence. Brad blinked. "Look at you, ready to conquer the plumbing world." She grinned, standing. "I figure if I'm going to flood my kitchen someday, I might as well do it with confidence." The group chuckled, and Brad handed her the wrench. "All right, warrior. Show us what you've got." Carmen approached the practice sink, eyeing the dripping faucet like it had personally insulted her. She crouched, gripping the wrench with determination. Brad hovered nearby, ready to assist if needed. "Okay," she muttered. "Lefty-loosey, righty-tighty, right?" "Correct," Brad said. "But remember, gentle. Pipes don't respond well to aggression." She shot him a look. "Are you saying I'm aggressive?" Brad smirked. "I'm saying you look like you're about to challenge that faucet to a duel." Carmen laughed, and Brad felt the sound settle somewhere deep in his chest. She turned back to the sink, twisting the wrench carefully. Too carefully. The wrench slipped, clattering to the floor with a metallic clang that made everyone jump. "Oh my God!" Carmen exclaimed, crouching to grab it. I swear it attacked me. Brad bent down at the same time, their hands colliding on the wrench. For a split second, their fingers tangled warm and firm, before Carmen pulled back with a nervous laugh. Sorry, she said, cheeks flushing. No harm done, Brad replied, his voice a little rougher than he intended. He handed her the wrench, forcing himself to focus. Try again. You've got this. She did, and this time she nailed it. The leak stopped, and Carmen straightened with a triumphant smile that made Brad forget how to breathe for half a second. Victory, she declared, raising the wrench like a trophy. Nicely done, Brad said, grinning. You're officially a faucet whisperer. Carmen laughed, shaking her head. I'll add that to my resume. The rest of the class went smoothly, though Brad found his attention drifting toward Carmen more than he liked. She was funny, quietly funny, the kind that sneaks up on you. When someone asked if duct tape could fix a leak, she whispered, only if you believe hard enough, and Brad nearly choked on his own laugh. By the end of the session, Carmen had signed up for the next class. Erica and Nick were inseparable, and Brad's mother was already inviting Carmen to her budgeting group with the enthusiasm of a seasoned matchmaker. As the crowd dispersed, Brad caught Carmen near the doorway, adjusting her purse strap while Erica tugged at her hand. Hey, he said, trying to sound casual. You did great today. She smiled, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Thanks. I didn't flood anything, so I'm calling it a win. Brad chuckled. That's the spirit. Erica popped her head around Carmen's leg. Mr. Brad. Brad crouched. Yeah, kiddo? Can Nick come to our house and play? Carmen groaned softly. Erica. Brad grinned. We'll see. Maybe after the next class. Erica beamed, and Carmen shook her head, smiling despite herself. She's persistent. Wonder where she gets that from, Brad teased. Carmen laughed, and for a moment, Brad felt something he hadn't felt in years. A spark, small but real, and it scared him just enough to make him want more. Chapter 6. Shared Stories. The third workshop session was all about electrical safety. How not to turn your kitchen into a fireworks display. Brad had just finished explaining the importance of shutting off the circuit breaker before touching anything when he called for a short break. People scattered toward the snack table his mother had set up inside, lured by cookies and tea like moths to a flame. Brad stayed behind, wiping his hands on a rag, when Carmen wandered back into the garage. Erica was inside with Nick, both of them giggling over something involving crayons and a suspiciously large cookie stash. Carmen looked relaxed for the first time since he'd met her. Still tired, but softer somehow. Escaping the budgeting boot camp? Brad teased, leaning against the workbench. Carmen laughed, rolling her eyes. Your mom is terrifying. Brad grinned. She's passionate. She's a drill sergeant with a teapot, Carmen said, smiling. But she's right. I needed that. Brad tilted his head. Budgeting trouble? Carmen hesitated, then shrugged. More like life trouble. Brad nodded slowly. I get that. She glanced at him, curiosity flickering in her eyes. You do. Brad exhaled, setting the rag down. Yeah. For years ago, my wife left. Middle of the night. Left a note, divorce papers, and signed away her parental rights. Carmen's eyes widened. She just left. Yep. Brad's voice was calm, but inside, the memory still stung. Didn't mention Nick once. He was 2 at the time. Carmen's hand tightened on the edge of the workbench. That's awful. Brad shrugged, a humorless smile tugging at his lips. Bills don't care about heartbreak, so I worked, built a new normal. Everything revolves around Nick now. Carmen was quiet for a moment, then said softly, he's lucky to have you. Brad swallowed hard, the words hitting deeper than he expected. Thanks. She hesitated, then added, my story's not much prettier. Erica's dad decided fatherhood wasn't for him. No fight, no warning. Just drove away one day. Brad's jaw tightened. People like that, I'll never understand. Me neither. Carmen gave a small, tired laugh. I kept thinking he'd come back, that he'd realize what he was missing. But he didn't. Brad studied her face. The strength there, the exhaustion, the quiet determination. You've done a hell of a job, he said gently. Erica's a great kid. Carmen smiled, and for a moment, the heaviness between them lifted. Thanks. She's my whole world. Brad nodded. Same with Nick. They stood in silence for a beat, the hum of conversation drifting in from the house. Then Carmen smirked. So, any tips for fixing broken hearts? Or is that in next week's class? Brad chuckled, shaking his head. If duct tape worked on hearts, I'd be rich. Carmen laughed. A real laugh, warm and bright, and Brad felt something shift inside him. Something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Possibility. Before he could say more, Erica barreled into the garage, Nick hot on her heels. Mommy, Nick says we can build a fort. Carmen groaned. A fort. Nick grinned. With tools. Brad raised an eyebrow. Tools are for fixing sinks, not building forts. Erica crossed her arms. Grandma said forts are good for imagination. Brad sighed, shooting Carmen an amused look. You can't argue with Grandma. Carmen laughed, shaking her head. Guess we're building a fort. Brad smiled, watching her scoop Erica into her arms. And as he followed them back inside, he realized something. Fixing broken pipes was easy. Fixing broken hearts? That might take a little longer. But maybe, just maybe, he was willing to try. Chapter 7. A little help from friends. Brad should have known something was up the moment his mother called him into the kitchen with that innocent smile, the one that usually preceded either unsolicited advice or a full-blown ambush. Bradley, she said sweetly, stirring a pitcher of lemonade like it owed her money. We're having a barbecue this weekend. He raised an eyebrow. We? Yes, we, she replied, her tone dripping with maternal authority. You, me, your father, Nick, and a few friends. Brad narrowed his eyes. Define friends. Oh, you know, she said airily. People from the workshop. Carmen and her little girl, for instance. Brad froze, the name hitting him like a wrench to the chest. Carmen. Yes, Carmen, his mother said, smiling like a cat with cream. She's lovely, and Erica is adorable. Nick likes her. Brad rubbed the back of his neck. Mom. Don't mom me, she said, wagging the spoon at him. You've been working yourself to death for years. It's time you had some fun. Fun, Brad repeated flatly. Like a barbecue with 20 people and a matchmaking agenda? Exactly, she said, beaming. Now go buy charcoal. Brad sighed, muttering under his breath as he grabbed his keys. He wasn't opposed to Carmen coming, far from it. But the idea of his mother orchestrating this like a rom-com puppet master made him want to hide in the garage. Saturday arrived with sunshine and the smell of sizzling burgers. Brad manned the grill, flipping patties like a pro while Nick darted around the yard with a water balloon arsenal. His father lounged in a lawn chair, pretending to supervise but mostly sipping iced tea. Brad was mid-flip when he heard laughter. Soft, warm, familiar. He turned, and there she was. Carmen walked across the yard in a simple sundress, Erica skipping beside her with pigtails bouncing. Carmen's hair was loose today, catching the light like dark silk, and Brad had to remind himself to breathe. Hey, he said, trying to sound casual as she approached. Glad you made it. Wouldn't miss it, Carmen replied, smiling. Erica's been talking about Nick all week. As if on cue, Nick appeared, grinning like a maniac and holding 2 water balloons. Erica, you ready? Erica squealed, grabbing a balloon from the bucket. Attack! Before Brad could intervene, chaos erupted. Water balloons flew like grenades, splattering across the lawn. Nick and Erica shrieked with laughter, weaving between chairs while Brad's father cheered them on like it was a sporting event. Brad groaned. This is going to end badly. Carmen laughed, eyes sparkling. They're having fun. Until someone gets soaked, Brad muttered. Just as a balloon exploded against his chest, drenching his shirt, he stared down at the wet fabric, then looked up to see Nick grinning like a tiny villain. Sorry, Daddy. Brad shook his head, chuckling. You're lucky you're cute. Carmen bit her lip, trying not to laugh, and failing. Guess you're part of the game now. Brad raised an eyebrow. Oh, I'm in it now. He grabbed a balloon from the bucket and lobbed it gently at Nick, who dodged with a triumphant yell. Another balloon sailed through the air, except this one missed Nick entirely and smacked Carmen square in the shoulder. Her gasp was followed by laughter, bright and unrestrained. Oh, you're in trouble now, she said, grabbing 2 balloons and launching a counterattack. Brad laughed so hard he nearly dropped the tongs. Within seconds, the barbecue had devolved into a full-scale water war, with Brad and Carmen teaming up against the kids, only to be betrayed when Nick and Erica joined forces and soaked them both. By the time the truce was called, everyone was dripping. The lawn looked like a battlefield, and Brad couldn't remember the last time he'd laughed this much. Later, as the sun dipped low and the grill cooled, Brad found himself sitting beside Carmen on the porch steps, both of them nursing glasses of lemonade. The kids were inside, plotting their next adventure under Grandma's watchful eye. Sorry about the ambush, Brad said, smiling sheepishly. My mom. She likes to meddle. Carmen laughed softly. Honestly, I needed this. It's been a long time since I've had fun. Brad nodded, his chest tightening at the quiet honesty in her voice. Me too. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching fireflies flicker in the dusk. Then Carmen glanced at him, her smile gentle. You're good at this, you know? At what? Making people feel safe, she said. And teaching. You're patient. Brad swallowed hard, the compliment hitting deeper than he expected. Thanks. That means a lot. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, the world narrowed to just them. The laughter, the warmth, the possibility hanging in the air like a promise. Brad didn't know where this was going, but for the first time in years, he wanted to find out. Chapter 8. The unexpected date. Brad was halfway through organizing tools for next week's workshop when his phone buzzed. He wiped his hands on a rag and glanced at the screen. Carmen. His chest did that stupid skip thing again. Hey, he answered, trying to sound casual. Hi, Carmen said, her voice warm but tinged with embarrassment. I have a favor to ask. Brad smiled. Shoot. My kitchen faucet is leaking, she said quickly. Like really leaking. I tried turning the knob tighter, but now it's worse. And I may have panicked and Googled things I don't understand. Brad chuckled. Sounds like you need a professional. I was hoping for a Brad, she said, then laughed nervously. I mean, someone who knows what they're doing. Brad grinned, feeling something light spark in his chest. Lucky for you, I'm available. I'll swing by after dinner. Thank you, Carmen said, relief flooding her voice. I owe you. You can pay me in cookies, Brad teased. Deal, she replied, laughing softly. See you soon. By the time Brad pulled into Carmen's driveway, the sun was dipping low, painting the sky in shades of peach and lavender. Erica's chalk drawings decorated the sidewalk. Smiling suns, crooked hearts, and what appeared to be a dinosaur wearing a crown. Brad smiled as he knocked on the door. Carmen opened it, and for a second, Brad forgot how to speak. She wasn't dressed up, just jeans and a soft t-shirt, but something about her felt effortless, comfortable, beautiful in a way that made his chest ache. Come in, she said, stepping aside. The kitchen's this way. Brad followed her inside, taking in the cozy space. It smelled faintly of vanilla, and a plate of cookies sat on the counter like a peace offering. There's your payment, Carmen said, gesturing to the plate. Brad grinned. I'll inspect the goods after I inspect the faucet. She laughed, leading him to the sink. Sure enough, water dripped steadily from the faucet, pooling around the base like a tiny rebellion. All right, Brad said, rolling up his sleeves. Let's see what we're dealing with. Carmen hovered nearby, watching as he crouched to check the pipes. Do you need me to do anything? Just don't panic, Brad said, flashing her a grin. Rule number 1. She smirked. I remember. Brad worked quickly, loosening the valve and replacing a worn washer. Carmen handed him tools when he asked, their fingers brushing more than once. Each accidental touch sent a spark through him, small, but undeniable. Almost done, Brad said, tightening the last piece. Moment of truth. He turned the faucet. The drip was gone. Carmen gasped. You fixed it. Brad smiled. Told you I was good for something. She laughed, her eyes bright. You're good for a lot of things. The words hung in the air, heavier than they should have. Brad felt his pulse kick up, his gaze locking with hers. For a moment, the world narrowed to just them. The quiet kitchen, the smell of cookies, the warmth in her eyes. He stepped closer, heart pounding. She didn't move away. In fact, she tilted her head slightly, her lips parting. Mommy! Erica's voice shattered the moment like a dropped plate. Can Nick come over tomorrow? Carmen jumped back, cheeks flushing. Maybe, sweetie. Brad cleared his throat, forcing a smile as Erica bounded into the kitchen, clutching a stuffed bunny. Hi, Mr. Brad. Hey, kiddo, Brad said, his voice a little rough. Your faucet's fixed. Erica beamed. You're a hero. Brad chuckled. Just doing my job. Carmen shot him a look, half amused, half something else, and Brad felt that spark again, stronger this time. Interrupted or not, it was there, and he wasn't sure he could ignore it much longer. Chapter 9. Doubts and Confessions. The night air was cool and soft, carrying the faint scent of freshly cut grass and charcoal from the earlier barbecue. Brad stood on the porch, hands shoved into his pockets, staring at the stars scattered across the dark sky like diamonds spilled on velvet. The house behind him was quiet now. Nick asleep, his parents winding down, the laughter of the day fading into memory. He should have felt content. He did, mostly. But underneath the calm was a restless hum, a question he couldn't shake. What am I doing? He'd promised himself years ago that he wouldn't let anyone in again. Not like before. Love had burned him once, left scars he still carried. And yet, every time Carmen smiled, every time her laugh slipped past his defenses, something inside him stirred. Something dangerous, something hopeful. The screen door creaked, and Brad turned. Carmen stepped out, hugging a light sweater around her shoulders. Her hair was loose again, tumbling over her collarbone, and the porch light painted her in soft gold. Hey, she said, her voice gentle. Mind if I join you? Brad shook his head. Not at all. She settled beside him on the steps, close enough that he could feel the warmth of her presence. For a moment, they sat in silence, watching fireflies blink in the yard. Thanks for today, Carmen said quietly. Erica had so much fun. Brad smiled. Nick too. He's already planning the next water balloon war. Carmen laughed softly, then fell quiet again. Her fingers traced the edge of her sweater, her gaze fixed on the stars. You ever feel like you're doing okay, but you're still scared? Brad glanced at her, something tightening in his chest. All the time. She looked at him then, her eyes searching his. I keep thinking I've got this under control, that I'm strong enough. But then, I wonder if I'm just pretending. Brad exhaled slowly. You're not pretending. You're surviving. That's harder than people think. Carmen's lips curved in a sad smile. You sound like you know. Brad stared at the yard, his voice low. When she left, I thought I'd never get back up. I was angry, broken. But Nick needed me, so I kept moving. Even when I didn't want to. Carmen's hand twitched, like she wanted to reach for him but wasn't sure if she should. You did more than survive, Brad. You built something. For him. For yourself. Brad swallowed hard, her words hitting deeper than he expected. Doesn't mean I'm not scared. Of what? She asked softly. He hesitated, then met her gaze. Of letting someone in again. Of trusting. Of wanting something I might lose. The silence stretched, heavy and fragile. Carmen's eyes glistened in the porch light, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm scared too. Of hoping. Of believing someone could stay. Brad's chest ached, the honesty between them raw and real. He wanted to tell her everything. That he liked her laugh, that he admired her strength, that he hadn't felt this alive in years. Instead, he said the only thing that felt safe. You're not alone, he murmured. Her breath hitched, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just them. The stars, the quiet, the warmth of something new blooming in the dark. Brad reached out, his fingers brushing hers. She didn't pull away. In fact, she turned her hand, letting his settle against hers like it belonged there. It wasn't a kiss. Not yet. But it was something, a promise, a beginning. And for the first time in years, Brad felt like maybe, just maybe, he wasn't afraid of tomorrow. Chapter 10. The turning point. Carmen's morning started like any other. Coffee, cartoons for Erica, and a mental pep talk in the bathroom mirror. You've got this. You're strong. You're going to nail this interview. She'd been waiting weeks for this opportunity. A steady job with decent pay and hours that wouldn't leave her scrambling for childcare. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a lifeline. She dressed carefully, smoothing her blouse, checking for stray wrinkles like they were personal insults. Erica twirled in the hallway, clutching Mr. Fluff, oblivious to her mother's nerves. Wish me luck, Carmen said, crouching to kiss her daughter's forehead. Good luck, Erica chirped. Bring home cookies. Carmen laughed, heart squeezing. I'll try. She grabbed her purse, her resume tucked inside like a secret weapon, and headed out the door. The car sat in the driveway, sun glinting off its hood. She slid behind the wheel, turned the key, and froze. Nothing, just a hollow click. No, Carmen whispered, turning the key again. Click, click, click. Her stomach dropped. No, no, no. She popped the hood, staring at the engine like it might explain itself. Didn't. She wasn't late yet, but she would be soon. Panic clawed at her chest. Then she thought of Brad. He answered on the second ring. Carmen. Brad, she said, voice tight. I'm sorry to bother you, but my car won't start. I have an interview in 30 minutes, and text me your address, Brad said immediately. I'm on my way. Carmen blinked. You don't have to. Send it, he said, firm but calm. I'll be there. She hung up, her heart pounding. Not just from panic, but from something else. Relief. Gratitude. The kind of comfort that comes from knowing someone has your back. Brad pulled into her driveway 10 minutes later, his truck rumbling like a promise. He hopped out, toolbox in hand, and gave her a quick smile that somehow made her knees weak. Pop the hood, he said, already moving. Carmen obeyed, hovering as he checked the battery. His hands were steady, confident, like he'd done this 1,000 times. She wanted to ask how he stayed so calm, but her throat felt tight. Battery's dead, Brad said after a moment. Lucky for you, I brought cables. He grabbed jumper cables from the truck, and within minutes, the engine roared to life. Carmen exhaled so hard she nearly sagged against the car. You're a lifesaver, she said, voice trembling. Brad grinned. Just doing my job. She laughed weakly. You're not even on the clock. Guess I'm bad at boundaries, he teased, then sobered. You're gonna make it. Go nail that interview. Carmen hesitated, then stepped closer, her eyes locking with his. Brad, thank you. His gaze softened, something warm flickering there. Anytime. For a moment, the world stilled, the hum of the engine, the sunlight on his face, the quiet promise in his eyes. Carmen wanted to say more, wanted to tell him how much this meant, how much he meant, but the clock was ticking. I'll call you after, she said, breathless. I'll be waiting, Brad replied, and the way he said it made her heart trip over itself. The interview went well, better than Carmen dared hope. When she walked out of the building, her phone buzzed with a text from Brad. How'd it go? She smiled, typing back. I think I got it. His reply came instantly. Knew you would. Proud of you. Carmen stared at the words, her chest tightening in a way that had nothing to do with stress. Proud of you. When was the last time someone said that to her and meant it? She didn't know where this was going. But she knew one thing. Brad Lockheart wasn't just fixing pipes and cars. He was fixing something in her she thought was broken for good. Chapter 11. Love in full bloom. The workshop had officially wrapped for the day, but Brad lingered in the garage, stacking chairs and wiping down the workbench. Outside, the late afternoon sun spilled gold across the yard, where Nick and Erica were engaged in what appeared to be a very serious game of tag involving chalk lines and a stuffed bunny as the flag. Carmen stepped into the doorway, her smile soft and tired in the best way, the kind of tired that comes from laughter, not stress. She held 2 glasses of lemonade, condensation dripping down the sides. "Thought you could use this," she said, crossing the room. Brad grinned, accepting the glass. "You're a lifesaver. Seems to be a theme," she teased, her eyes sparkling. Brad chuckled, taking a sip. "You did great today. You're practically a pro now." Carmen laughed. "Don't let the confidence fool you. I still panic when I hear the word breaker." Brad smirked. "You'll get there." For a moment, they stood in comfortable silence, the hum of cicadas filling the air. Then Carmen set her glass down, her expression shifting, softening into something vulnerable. "I got the job," she said quietly. Brad's head snapped up. "You did." She nodded, her smile blooming like sunlight. "They called this morning. I start next week." Brad felt his chest tighten with something fierce and warm. "Carmen, that's amazing." "Thanks," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I couldn't have done it without you." Brad shook his head. "You did that on your own." "Maybe," she said softly. "But you made me believe I could." The words hit him like a punch, gentle but powerful. He set his glass aside, stepping closer before he could second-guess himself. Carmen didn't move away. In fact, she tilted her chin up, her eyes locking with his. "Brad," she whispered, and that was all it took. He kissed her. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't hesitant. It was warm and steady, like everything he'd been holding back for years finally finding its way out. Carmen melted into him, her hands curling against his chest, and for a moment, the world was nothing but the taste of lemonade and the feel of her lips. "Yes!" a voice shrieked, shattering the moment like a firecracker. Brad jerked back, turning to see Nick and Erica standing in the doorway, grinning like they'd just won the lottery. "They kissed," Nick yelled, pumping his fist. "We called it." Erica clapped her hands. "Do it again." Carmen groaned, burying her face in Brad's shoulder as laughter bubbled out of him uncontrollably. "We have an audience," he murmured. "Apparently," she muttered, her cheeks flaming. Nick and Erica exchanged a high-five like victorious sports commentators. "Best day ever," Nick declared. Brad shook his head, still laughing, and pressed a quick kiss to Carmen's temple. Because at this point, why fight it? "Guess the secret's out," he said softly. Carmen smiled, her eyes bright with something that felt like hope. "Guess so." And as the kids raced off to announce their discovery to Grandma, Brad realized something simple and undeniable. Fixing broken pipes had been easy. Fixing broken hearts? That had taken time, trust, and one incredible woman. But standing there, with Carmen's hand in his and laughter echoing through the house, Brad knew one thing for sure. It had been worth every second. Chapter 12. Building a future. The workshop had started as an idea over tea, a way to teach people how to fix leaky faucets and balance budgets. Now, months later, it had become something bigger. Something alive. Brad stood in the garage, watching a group of neighbors laugh as they practiced changing a tire. His father was in his element, explaining torque like it was a sacred art, while his mother presided over the dining room with her budgeting charts and a plate of cookies that could end wars. The Lockhart house had turned into a hub of learning, laughter, and second chances. And Carmen was right there in the middle of it all. She was leaning over a workbench, helping a teenager figure out how to replace a washer. Her hair was pulled back, a pencil tucked behind her ear, and Brad couldn't stop smiling. She looked confident now, steady, sure of herself in a way that made his chest ache with pride. When she caught him staring, she grinned. "What?" "Nothing," Brad said, walking over. "Just, you're amazing." Carmen laughed softly. "You're biased." "Maybe," he said, his voice low, "but I'm also right." Her cheeks flushed, and Brad felt that familiar spark, the one that had started as a flicker and now burned steady and bright. Later, when the last guest left and the garage was quiet, Brad found Carmen on the porch, sipping tea while Erica and Nick chased fireflies in the yard. The kids' laughter floated through the warm evening air, mingling with the hum of crickets. "Long day," Carmen said, smiling as Brad sat beside her. "Good day," he corrected. She nodded, her gaze drifting to the children. "They're happy." Brad followed her eyes, his chest tightening. "Yeah, they are." For a moment, they sat in silence, watching Nick and Erica dart across the grass like tiny comets. Then Carmen spoke, her voice soft. "I never thought life could feel like this again." Brad turned to her, his heart pounding. "Me neither." She looked at him then, her eyes shimmering in the porch light. "Brad." He reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "We're building something," he said quietly. "Not just workshops. A life. A family." Her breath hitched, and when she smiled, it was like the sun breaking through clouds. "I want that," she whispered. "With you." Brad leaned in, kissing her gently. No interruptions this time, just the quiet certainty of two people choosing each other. When they pulled apart, Carmen laughed softly, resting her forehead against his. "Think your mom planned this?" she teased. Brad chuckled. "She probably has a spreadsheet." Carmen laughed, and Brad kissed her again because he could, because this was their future now, messy and beautiful in theirs. Inside, the kids burst through the door, shouting about fireflies and bedtime snacks, and Brad realized something simple and undeniable. Fixing broken pipes had been easy. Fixing broken hearts had taken time, trust, and one incredible woman. But standing there, with Carmen's hand in his and their children's laughter echoing through the house, Brad knew one thing for sure. They weren't just fixing things anymore. They were building a home. Chapter 13. Epilogue, Fixing Hearts. 6 months later, the Lockheart garage looked nothing like it had before. The folding chairs were gone, replaced by sturdy benches. The walls gleamed with fresh paint, and a banner stretched across the entrance. Fix it and finance. Learn. Laugh. Live. Brad stood under the banner, adjusting it for the third time. Straight enough, he called. Brad, Carmen said from behind him, laughter in her voice. If you adjust that thing one more time, I'm going to duct tape you to the ladder. He grinned, climbing down. Duct tape fixes everything. Except your perfectionism, she teased, handing him a cup of coffee. Brad kissed her cheek in thanks because that was normal now. Kissing her, touching her, loving her. It still amazed him sometimes. How easily she'd slipped into his life. How naturally their families had blended. Nick and Erica were practically siblings now, united in their shared mission to eat every cookie Grandma baked. Speaking of which, his mother bustled past with a tray of snacks, muttering about keeping people fed so they don't faint over their credit card statements. His father followed with a box of tools, whistling like a man who'd found his calling. The first guests began to arrive, laughter spilling into the yard. Carmen smoothed her blouse, her eyes bright with excitement. Ready? Brad looked at her. The woman who'd walked into his garage months ago, tired and uncertain, and somehow turned his world right side up. More than ready. The workshop kicked off with Brad demonstrating how to replace a faucet cartridge while Carmen led a budgeting game inside. People laughed, asked questions, and scribbled notes. At one point, Brad overheard Carmen telling a group, "If you can't afford it twice, you can't afford it once." And he grinned. She was a natural. During the break, they stood together in the doorway, watching their kids chase each other across the yard. Nick was wearing a tool belt 3 sizes too big. Erica had a clipboard and was taking notes like a tiny CEO. "They're going to run this place someday," Carmen said, smiling. Brad slipped an arm around her waist. "Fine by me." She leaned into him, her voice soft. "We did it." Brad kissed her temple, his heart full. "Yeah, we did." As the sun dipped low and the last guests left, Brad and Carmen sat on the porch steps, their hands entwined, laughter drifting from inside where Grandma was bribing the kids with bedtime cookies. "You know," Carmen said, her tone teasing, "I came here to learn budgeting. Not this." Brad smiled. "Not what?" She turned to him, her eyes warm. "Not love." Brad's chest tightened, and he kissed her, slow, certain, like a man who knew exactly what he wanted. When they pulled apart, Carmen laughed softly. "Think we should add a new class?" Brad raised an eyebrow. "What kind?" "How to fix a broken heart," she said, grinning. Brad chuckled, kissing her again. Already did. And as the porch light glowed and the sound of children's laughter filled the night, Brad realized something simple and undeniable. Fixing pipes had been easy. Fixing hearts had taken time, trust, and one incredible woman. But now everything was exactly where it belonged.